All right. Good morning, good morning. We are right here, spot on time, 7:30 a.m. What's going on, Janae? I see you on. I'm sitting up here drinking my elixir, feeling good. I see people jumping on, which is good. Glad to have everybody here. We're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning. I am Dr. Thomas Rashard Easley. Happy to be here with you on this Sunday morning early. And let's see. Let's go ahead and get the other ones. Good morning to you all. Let's go ahead and get the other ones out of the way. What's going on, Ellen? I see Ellen just jumped on. Let's see if you want to follow me in some other places. Talitha just jumped on. Good to see you. You can follow me at, let's see, my website, RashadEasley.com, RashadEasley.com. YouTube, youtube.com/RashadAdi. Facebook, Rashad Easley, or look me up, Thomas Easley. And then on Twitter and Instagram, it is Rashad Ease, RashadEaS. Walaikum salam. Appreciate the people joining on this morning. So let's get into it. Let's see. So if you are anywhere in the world right now, this past week, I'm sure was an interesting display or exhibit for you to watch in the United States of America. And if you're in the United States of America, it was definitely probably interesting for you too. Maybe challenging for some, exciting for others, you know. Cool. And so today we're going to talk about, no, I am not. Today we're gonna I'm gonna talk about what I'm gonna be talking about at Peace Church today. Peace Church is the church that I lead. We meet at 11 a.m. Eastern time here in the U.S. At NC State's campus. So what I'm going to do really is present to you what we're going to talk about today, okay? So let me take another sip of this and then we're going to get into it. Just kick back and relax and listen, you know, because this is, you know, like this post is more about listening and me, you know, sharing things. And then if you want to engage with me more, you can email me at thomasreasley@easleybranch.com. So this past Tuesday was definitely, it was a good day. I decided to go back to my roots this morning and dress up, you know, this way. So I remember this past Tuesday, I woke up, great day, had meetings all that day. I took my students on an excursion that night. And we basically went around the city. We were really looking at environmental justice challenges or environmental justice issues. And we showed them the side of town that was real nice, that had a lot of money in it, that has a Whole Foods and a bank, bookstores, restaurants. And then in like a 5-mile journey, you know, really roughly 5 miles, we showed them how when you go to the other side of town, it doesn't look like that. And to see their eyes, you know, like they were like, whoa, like, okay. But what I'm proud of is that it wasn't like a pity look. It was more just kind of like oh, really? Like, you've been telling us this, but for us to see it, it's like, whoa. And so we go like to a Whole Foods, and we went to a Larry's supermarket, and they saw the differences there. But then they also noticed the differences of the neighborhood and how the people engaged with each other and talked to each other. And they noticed that even on the side of town where the food was not the best or greatest or even organic, when they went in the store, they noticed how everybody was talking to them, how the people were willing to show them things. So they, you know, were really making this, you know, kind of like a connection between different sides of town. Then we get to the library. I take them to the library, and we're going to watch this virtual experience of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And as I'm walking in, we have a real nice library on campus, and there's this television, like a display with all these live screens. And of course, it's covering the election live. And I look, and what I saw on the screen was exactly what I saw like 6 months ago happening. Like, seriously. I'm not trying to be a damper on anybody, but I looked and I saw that. I was like, whoa, okay. Right, exactly. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, we got a class to do. And so we went, you know, and tried to do the class. And I noticed that my students were kind of distraught, at least a couple of them, and they wanted to keep talking about it and keep talking. And I was actually chill, not that I wasn't touched or disappointed or anything. It doesn't matter, or concerned, whatever. But I was chill, and my students kept trying to talk, and I'm just basically like in this position of trying to calm them down, just like peace, and I was just like, okay. And so I got home that night. I think I was in the bed between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. I was up Wednesday by 4:30. It was time to work out. I worked out, got myself ready for that day and went into work. And I could just tell the vibe was so different, on campus. I mean, it was somber and it was a pretty day. And I really spent most of my day trying to elevate other people. Like, come on, like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Now, let me first not sound cavalier in that, like there's nothing to be concerned about. I'm not saying that at all. But but at the same time, people are really scared, and I definitely, get that. People, it's almost like we're feeling like, oh man, like we're going backwards. We're going to hell in the handbasket with this and that. And so I really spent a lot of time talking to people. Not really solving that vibe, but just kind of letting them know, like, let's give let's wait, let's see what's going to happen. Let's calm down. Let's give it a chance. As a matter of fact, I love what Dave Chappelle said last night on Saturday Night Live. If anybody watched it, I'm so glad I recorded it. He said, as a person of color, like something like of a disenfranchised group, he said, I'm going to give him a chance. All I'm asking you is to do the same. And so, that's really the vibe. That's the stance that I'm taking. It's like, well, let's see what actually happens. But it's in times like this, or like for some people, this may be tragic, and but it's times like this when I know that a question that I was getting a lot was, is God in control? And so what what I'm really going to do is title. This whole message, is like really like, is God really in control? Is God really in control? Because I know that a lot of people really question that and wonder that, especially when they see things happening around them and they're just like, man, this cannot be going down. This cannot be real. And it's like, is God really in control? So the thing that I want to, talk about again is kind of take that stance from the election and then just kind of go into the message of today. And so I want to talk about religion for a moment. And I think, and in particular, whether you identify as Christian or not, I really kind of want to take this stance and focus some on the church in particular. And because as a Christian, as a person who leads the church, like that's kind of like my primary focus anyway. And these are the groups that I'm constantly talking to, okay, people who are in this tribe group, in this identity group as being a Christian. And so, but regardless, if you're not, please just stay along, with the ride, and let's just see if we can kind of come to a point down the line. So now here we go. Now that I set it up, let me get into my normal character. So here we go. Modern day Christians, to me today, some of us are like the disciples before Christ went to the cross. I'll say it again. Modern day Christians, to me today, are a lot like the disciples before Christ went to the cross. Now let me explain what I mean by that. They're a lot like the disciples before Christ went to the cross. If you look in our day and time now, I think that there's certain things that we took for granted, especially around, like, say, the election and around this whole climate. And part of it is I want to give, I'll be honest, at least for me, I'm going to give President Obama, like a thumbs up of praise and say, he did a great job, and as well as his spouse as well. Come on, like First Lady Obama. When have we ever had a couple like that to represent the country? Okay, to represent the country. I'm not just going to say represent the community or represent African Americans. When have we ever had a couple that represented the country like that? We never have. We've never had a couple that was powerful, both sides, husband and wife, or president and spouse. We have not, had that like we just had it. So when I think about Jesus, when Jesus was alive, during the time that he was alive, they never had a leader who was like that. They never had a leader that could heal people, that could do miracles, that was fearless in his approach and in what he was saying, but also gentle and empathetic and also sympathetic with people at the time. And then the fact that it was a man doing it, when I would probably say like men, obviously things are still very male dominated, and we could be, like chauvinist or misogynist. And here's a man who is none of that, right? And he's a rabbi, he's a teacher, he's Hebrew, he's Jewish, he's all of these things, and he's not old. He's only like 30 to 33, and so he's doing all of these wonderful things, right? And people are rolling with him. I'm going to ask you, I see your question, but I'm going to ask you to save the question, or email it to me. Okay. So, cause I don't want to ignore you, but I'm on this one. I'm going to get kind of through this. So anyway, so when you're around that, and you're also charged to do things in your life based on being around that, right? So now you have disciples, and they're charged and, pushed to, to do some things based on their relationship with Jesus. And so I'm going to give you a list of why I say the modern day Christians today, to me, are like the disciples back then before Jesus went to the cross. Number one, they were comfortable because Jesus was with them. Okay. They were comfortable because Jesus was with them. Like, how when, let's say, like if you're around someone and you see them doing some big things, and eventually you're going to kind of be charged to do some things, right? You probably feel more comfortable with them around than when they're not around, and then it's just up to you. Number two, they questioned what they were doing, or they questioned what they were told to do. So there are times when if Jesus sent them out on an assignment, yeah, they would go, but they would kind of go, you could, if you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, you could tell that they kind of went, but there was sometimes like this inquisitiveness about it. Like, why is he sending us here? And why are we doing it this way? Next, they had this glamorized view of God. And I think that a lot of people today still have this glamorized view of God, like, this God is kind of like this puppet master that's, like controlling this car that's coming your way that's going to cause you to be in an accident, and then this is going to change your life for the rest of time. And God is like orchestrating all of these different things. Therefore, if God is orchestrating all of these different things, then that means I can pray for God to rearrange all of these different things. So they had this glamorized view of God. They had an unrealistic view of the world as well as of God. Like the disciples, thought like when the blind man was blind, their blindness was a punishment, and God didn't love him and God didn't care about him. You see, so they had this real unrealistic view, this real kind of like this like dominant, tyrannical view of God. They were happy to defer to or deny Jesus instead of standing on their own, which kind of goes to the first one in a way. But, and we can look at the disciple Peter in particular. Notice I said they can defer to Jesus, like, you got a question, you can go to him. Or when Jesus got caught and they were alone, it was like, I'm not with him. They were ecstatic to please God without knowing the stakes. And that's what a lot of people do. Like a lot of folks like to get busy and do a lot of great work without thinking or taking into consideration what's really at stake here. Like what's really going to be on the line. They got ahead of themselves with no wisdom. Like there were times when Jesus would tell the disciples, this is going to happen to me. Like in Matthew 16:23, when he was like, I'm going to be crucified and this is going to happen to me. And then Peter's like, oh, no, nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going anywhere. So they got ahead of themselves with no wisdom, like they weren't fully thinking through what's really going on. They were unaware of what God had planned. So they're doing this work and they're walking with God incarnate, but they're still unaware of what the plan really is. Just kind of blindly, like walking. And then they enjoy being affiliated with Christ until it costs them something. So they enjoy being affiliated with Christ until it costs something. So, like that right there, is even a challenge, in itself, because that's a lot of us. Like I'm down with you until I realize what it's actually going to cost me. And so, and how do I know this? Like how do I see the disciples this way? And I'll tell you how. Because when Jesus died, the disciples did one of the few things. They either went into hiding and they went back to doing what they were doing before Jesus even came into their life. Think about when you've been in a relationship with someone or with something. Like, I think about my previous relationships, just to try to illustrate this, or my previous, engagements with people. And I'm going to kind of talk from their perspective versus mine. Going out, like with someone, you look at them and you look at their differences compared to yours. And one of the things that has happened to me usually is like when I've gone out with people, they will either get into like maybe vegetarianism because they know that I'm a vegetarian. They would get into maybe working out or consider working out, or even me with my elixirs, my juices, and my smoothies. Maybe they get interested in that. Maybe the things that I read, me being, very, like pro black, but then open to other identities, period. Like being pro black is not anti something else. And then when a relationship ends or something comes that causes a separation or like a split, it is really interesting to watch people basically kind of fall back into what they did. So like if they weren't really working out at first, then they basically fall back into not working out. If they weren't really making good choices with their food or with their diet, they basically fall back into it. If they weren't, if they weren't, like getting up, and doing more to take care of their body and do various things like that before I came in, then of course when I leave, they basically fall back into what they do, which tells me that they didn't really take on what it was that they thought was good about me. They were really doing it because I was around and because they were with me. So in a way, they weren't really doing it for themselves. They were doing it for me, which is an issue, because if you're doing anything for somebody else that can benefit you, is not going to be sustainable because you're not doing it for yourself. I think about like when I used to go to church as a child, and I enjoyed going with my grandmother. But when she passed away, going to church became a challenge because my motivation for going to church really was her. It wasn't me doing it on my own. And when it became my own thing, my whole relationship with it changed, and I really became, and I really got into my relationship with God, and things completely changed. And so here's the thing. When I think about the election and things that have recently happened, I think a number of us probably got kind of comfortable with the situation, didn't really take it as serious in some ways. And so when everything went down, it's like you went down. Now, look, I was born during the Carter era, was alert and awake during the Reagan era, was going through struggles during the Bush era, became a man during the Clinton era, was a full-fledged man working on my own life economy during the second Bush era, and then became a fully confident doctor, business person who puts myself out there during the Obama era. And so when the chain of events happened this past week, I wasn't freaking out because I'm like, man, I live in a country that made an actor the United States president back in the 80s. We made an actor the governor of like one of the biggest states in the country. Like we live in a country of people who sometimes struggle with amnesia, who don't remember, like say the predecessor and what the predecessor did. It's like whoever comes in is like we totally forget who got us here, and then we want to try to blame someone else. And then we live in a country where when we try to do some good things or get some things moving, it's usually like 4 to 8 years we'll get something happening. Then the next 4 to 8 years, somebody comes in to undo it, right? And then to start something new. So it becomes hard for us, this diversity that we have here, to really get some good things going in a more sustainable way and to keep it going, because we always see it like it's an us against them. We're not seeing it like it's us with us. It's always us against them. And to me, that's how a disciple sees the world. But here's the thing about in the Bible that I hope that you'll notice, and you'll notice this, I think, with any religious group or any faith group, is that you have a group of people who are kind of like your beginner people. So I would say in this case, the disciples. And then you have the people who are the more seasoned people, veterans of this thing. And I consider them to be the apostles. And what's so funny about the Bible is that the apostles and the disciples are the same people. It's just that something had to happen for them to shift. And what had to happen is their relationship with what they were engaging in had to shift. So their relationship with God had to turn. It had to move. And this is why I say modern day Christians, to me, today are like disciples before Jesus went to the cross. Because it was after he went to the cross, after he was resurrected, after he sat with them for those 40 days before he ascended, the stuff that Jesus told them is what took them to the next level. So basically, something had to die, something had to come back alive or come alive, and then something had to be explained. And then once it was explained, the other thing that had to happen is they had to take something on themselves. Like they had to put themselves out there and really kind of like walk on faith. And then you watched how they changed. So what I'm going to do is give you kind of like this list. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn it around and give you a chance to look at it. Okay? So here it is. I want you to take a look at this screen. So I talk about there being a difference. And I just want you to look from one to the other, okay, left to right. All right. So when you look at a disciple follows. That's how the disciples were with Jesus. But an apostle is led by. So the disciples follow somebody, but an apostle is led by the Spirit. Okay. In the Bible, it would be the Holy Spirit. Go back over to the left. The disciples waited. So they would wait. Like basically, I'm going to sit back and wait for someone to tell me to do something. But an apostle, they made it happen. An apostle doesn't wait. They go and make it happen. They see something that needs to be done and then they get on it. A disciple judges people and sends them away. The disciples would do that a lot when they were with Jesus, especially when he fed the 5,000. They were more concerned about them eating than they were the people eating. But Jesus was more concerned about the people eating than them eating. Apostles make relationships and welcomes people in. This is something that the church in particular really needs to work on, because one of the things that a lot of churches do today is we use ministries to be the impetus for us developing relationships, but it should be the other way around, the way that Paul did it. It should be we use the relationships as the impetus for developing ministries and growing churches. Disciples wait for instruction. Apostles seeks God instruction. Okay, are you seeing the pattern here? That the disciples wait, but the apostles go. Disciples do things for somebody or to be like somebody else. Apostles do things on their own volition, being what God wants. See, the disciples in a lot of ways look to be pleased or they're pleasing, but the apostles are only concerned with pleasing God. Disciples are externally motivated. Like, you notice how today a lot of people need motivation. You know, like they need to hear somebody else and hear what they're saying for them to go and do something. Apostles are internally stimulated and they are driven. They don't wait for leaders to tell them to do anything. You know, like they don't wait for the next, like Andy Stanley or Charles Stanley post. You know, they don't wait for the State of the Union, to actually do something that they know that they're called to do. They go and they do it. A disciple wants to know the path before they act. An apostle walks the path because they believe. I kind of look at this in terms of one of my favorite movies. Have you ever seen the movie The Matrix, starring Keanu Reeves? And his character, Neo, which is really the central focus of the whole film series, is he's a person that's in the Matrix, that is asleep, but his curiosity is causing him to want to be awake. He gets awakened. And then in his awakeness, he learns about who he really is and what he is to do. And the first part, he's trying to figure it all out. Like, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Because that's what a disciple does. They want all of the information before they even act. And when Morpheus told him, you're going to learn that there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. And see, an apostle walks the path and knows that God is with him or her. A disciple is like, tell me everything before I actually do it. And then the last but not least is react to what's happening. And then an apostle understands that there's more at play in any situation. So a person who reacts to the election or different things that happen, the apostle understands that there's more at play here, that there's more, not just more at stake, but there's more going on here. So disciples see small picture and apostle sees the big picture. So going back to the title of this whole thing, if you remember, I said the title of this is God Really in Control? And I think that if you are operating in the disciple or the modern day Christian, you'll probably question whether or not God is in control. You're like, God's not in control, or God wouldn't let this happen. Going back to that glamorized view of God. But if you're an apostle, you understand that God is in control. Just from my belief, I look at the way that Jesus, what happened when Jesus went to the cross. Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane praying. asking his friends, his disciples, 3 of them, to pray with him because he knew what was getting ready to happen. While he's praying, stressed out, the disciples are asleep. And he went to them 3 different times, like, just need you to stay awake with me and pray. And the 3rd time, he let them sleep because at that time, Jesus was at peace. Jesus knew what was coming. He was fine. When the 600 soldiers came to get him, the first thing that some of the disciples did was run. Judas identified him. Peter attacked. But the only person who kept their cool was the one who was the target at the time, which was Jesus, because he understood that there was more at stake here. And he knew what he was doing, and he was at peace with what he was about to do. It wasn't that it was going to be easy at all. And I can't even talk too much about it because I can't even fathom that. Can you imagine what it's like to take pain for the world that you didn't even do yourself, like you're not even guilty of it, and you got to take it and keep taking it. And that's take the lies, take the mocking, take the beating, take the pain, take the people not listening, take your friends turning their back on you. And then when he got to the cross, keep in mind he had to walk everywhere while he's getting these beat downs. So he's walking on his feet, holding himself up, and then he gets to the cross. And even on the cross, what is he doing? He's on the cross praying for the people who have him up there. Praying for them because he understands something. God is in control of this. Jesus said, always fear the person that can do something with your soul, not the ones who can do something with your body. We have always had situations in this world where people who are marginalized have always risen out of struggle. You know, we've always gotten to the top, or our voice was louder in the midst of struggle. Because for I think the majority of us, that's what it takes for us to get active and to do something. So the question really isn't, is God in control? Because to me, the answer is obvious. The answer is yes. The question is God in control of you? Is your central focus on God? Is God your ultimate source? Because if your attention is not on God, then God doesn't have control of you, and you're going to react to everything that's going on around you. Just like what happened this week. People freaking out, people being mad, people being scared. And keep in mind, I'm not trying to be cavalier about it and say we don't have anything to be concerned about. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying this. If you believe that you haven't been given the spirit of fear, then you don't have to be scared. If you believe that you are wondrously and marvelously made, then you really don't have to be scared. And I know that's easier said than done, but that's really the truth. If you really believe that, and that is in your soul, that is anchored in your heart, then you don't have to be scared. What you understand is that this is time for us to be activated. As President Obama said, it's time to activate. It's time for us to do this thing. It's time for us to get out here. And so I'm going to close on these points. And then, as I said, if you want to email me and have a question for me, please email me or find me on Facebook. Number 1, be encouraged and get to work. The kingdom of God lives in us. So one way the grace of God shows up in the world is through your acts and your behavior. So the next question is, what kind of action can you take right now to help the Spirit of God, the kingdom of God, to permeate this situation in this planet? Because no problem is solved instantly. We didn't get here overnight, so nothing's going to be solved overnight. Number 3, how are you going to work to solve problems? Keep this in mind. You can't solve a problem until you realize you're part of the problem you are trying to solve. So how are you going to solve problems? And then last but not least, many people fought and died for you and I to even be able to do this, to be able to have freedom of speech, to talk like this, and to do it without being concerned about my freedom. My question is, what are you going to do for those coming up behind you? Okay. And I'm hoping that regardless what happened this week, regardless what side that you sat on, regardless what you feel, fear, and believe, that these words really encourage you to do something and to realize that God has not left us. God is still in control. God has never let up on the control. But the way that we understand things sometimes and the way that we see them, maybe we're operating in that disciple view, in that comfortable view, instead of that realistic apostle view that understands that God is with you. Life is not going to be easy. Results are not always going to go in your favor. They're not always going to go in your way. And guess what? That is okay, because we're going to get through this and we're going to make it, because we always have. That's the crazy part. Up until this point, if you know anything about history, we always have. And so I want to really just touch on, yes, I understand being concerned. I am concerned. Like I said, I'm not aloof about that. I'm not ignorant to that. But what I'm also not doing is walking around in fear and walking around seeing everybody else out there like they're villains and like they're my enemies. I'm still being more introspective and looking at myself and looking at what else I can do. So with that, 11 a.m. we're going to be at Peace Church, 2810 Case Avenue, Cates, Case Avenue, 11 a.m. We love to have you there. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Rashad Ease, youtube.com/RASHAADI, my website, RashadEasley.com. And then, of course, you can find me on Facebook, and you are obviously following me here on Periscope. I thank you all for getting on with me this morning. Thank you for the questions. Email me at thomasreasley@easleybranch.com if you have any thoughts or concerns about anything that was said here today, or hit me up on Facebook. However works for you. God bless you. We're going to see you all next Sunday. Hope to see you today. Peace.